All right. I'm here with RH. How you doing, RH?
I'm doing all right. How are you, Burton?
I'm good. We're here doing a speculation stream for the upcoming balance patch tomorrow, Thursday, September 11th. Um, yeah, exciting stuff. Getting a new balance patch. Hopefully, uh, some things are taken care of, and maybe we'll get some fun stuff too. So yeah, the first thing I wanted to do was kind of go over some things from co3stats.com, look at where the balance is now, and yeah, then we can go into speculating. So, oops. The first thing I wanted to do is actually look at 1v1 balance for all factions, all elos. And actually, when you look at the big picture here, it's actually everything's pretty balanced. It's never going to be perfect, but everything being kind of within that 1% of 50 is pretty good. I'll look at team games a little too, but I am not nearly as knowledgeable about team games. So we're not going to talk about that a whole lot today. But you can see it's pretty even. Dak has a slight edge in some of these team games, but pretty even. Yeah, so I mean, I think all things considered, that's a pretty good sign. And then the only other thing I wanted to look at while we're on this screen is the maps, the 1v1 maps specifically with Simois, like by far the least played. And I'll go into that a little bit more detail when we get to some of the other pages. But Simois barely getting played, and Jabal Pass, one of the newest maps, also near the bottom. And then everything else is, I guess Pacino's a little low, but everything else after that is pretty even, with Road to Tunis being the most popular, which I think makes sense. It's kind of your most standard map, pretty open. But I would not have expected Longris at number 2, but that's where the maps sit for 1v1.
It's because not everybody's a Longris hater like you, Burton.
I just can't stand it. I shouldn't say I can't stand it. I think I took it out of my ban list. Um, it's just it's too small.
I am
Um,
surprised, looking at that, I am surprised that Angeville is as low down on that list as it is.
so
I always
I
thought
have
Angeville was
hmm,
a solid map.
I have opinions about Angeville. I think I've actually talked about this on stream before, but Angeville. Oh shoot, can't see anything. Yeah, I should probably switch to the right scene. Thanks, Elfie. Oh boy, pro streamer. Um, Here you go. Now you can see. Sorry about that. So yeah, Angeville. Oh man, it's it's supposed to be, the way they describe it is that it's a clockwise balance, which is like how Road to Tunis is. So if both players leave their base going clockwise, they both have the same resource opportunities. So you'll both have the same fuel opportunities, whatever. And that's how they describe Angeville. It's a clockwise map, which sort of works. Like if you're the bottom player on Angeville, I wonder if I can get up a picture of Angeville real quick and kind of illustrate my point. That one looks like it. Co2. Well, here's a Co1 version, and it'll illustrate my point well enough. Oh, it's still Co2, isn't it?
Yep.
Here's Co1. This will illustrate my point well enough. Actually, the territory layout is very
Almost exactly.
similar. Yeah, there's a fuel here and a fuel here on the Co3 version. But so if number 2 here leaves their base this way, they have a low fuel, they have this high fuel, Same munitions as if number one went this way out of their base. So they're both leaving clockwise out of their base. Same resource opportunity. And this is very standard for all CoH3 maps. Not all of them, but many of them. But where Angoville is different is the victory points are not equal opportunity. If number two goes out clockwise, they only have one victory point here. But if number one goes clockwise, they have two victory points on this side. Granted, this one is closer to number two, but it's not an even split. And if you think of a map like Road to Tunis, the victory point opportunities are equal. And if you want to think of kind of the opposite example, Twin Beaches is balanced. I don't know what you would call it, like a mirror. It's not
Yeah.
clockwise anymore, but it's a mirror. So if both players go to the bottom side of the map, they have the same opportunities. Or if both players go to the top side of the map, they have the same opportunities. But critically, the victory points reflect that. So the top side of the map on Twin Beaches has the one victory point right in the middle. The bottom side has two victory points, one closer to each player's base. And Angeville kind of takes the victory points from the mirror format, but everything else from the clockwise format. And I think that is just bad design. It makes it so, in my opinion, I always feel like the in this image here, the number two player is a little disadvantaged. Maybe that's not accurate, but that's how I always feel. I don't know. What do you think,
I think
Coach?
I think that the I do see the clockwise balancing, like you said. I think where it comes in the favor of the number two player is that it's a lot easier for the number two player to, at least in the early to mid game, choke point off the VP near their base, because the only routes in are, you have, I think, four, with two of them being on the wide flank. There's one on the bottom right that, at least in Co3, is up on top of the top of the hill where the two muni points meet, um, bottom right of that screenshot, and then the road down the middle. But besides those two, the only routes in are pretty easy to choke point with mines, MGs, etc. Like, you know where your enemy's going to be coming from. Obviously, in the late game, you can alter that completely with heavy tanks, but at least at the start, like, I always find at in the bottom number two position, if I can keep at least partial ownership of the choke point routes in, that it's kind of okay to hold that point out. It gets tricky depending on who you're playing and what you're playing as, but I feel a little more confident on the bottom number two side than I do on the number one side,
That's
because the number
interesting.
one side, it's a lot more like the number one side's VP on their clockwise route is a lot more open terrain, so it's easier to get flanks off, since they're reliant on using one of the two garrisons to the, like, at least from that mini map's perspective, the northwest side of the VP. Like, if those two garrisons are pretty strong, but if they lose ownership of those garrisons, or the garrisons are blocked with indirect, then it is actually, I think, a weaker defense. But I don't want to get I don't want to get too stuck into it now. That's just my at a glance thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I guess like it is still, a lot of people are still playing it. It's not like it's downvoted as much
Yeah,
as Simois or something.
it could be worse. It could be some more.
But I do think the weird clockwise versus mirror placement of things is probably why it's down there, if I had to guess.
That's fair.
Samoa, on the other hand, that needs to just come out of the auto match pool.
Yeah, I have that whoever designed that map, like, I don't even know what you had to be taking to think that that map was designed. Well, that is a map that I would play with my, like, friends drunk in college when we did, like, the pub stomps, where you just, like, spend 2 hours blowing crap up with Artie, and like you're bottlenecked on a bridge. That's the kind of map that Samoa is, but somebody decided to put it in auto match in 1v1.
Right. It's not an auto match map. I agree.
Yeah.
Uh, got some quite consistent buffering. Don't think it's my end. Oh boy. Hopefully my stream's not lagging. For now, I'll keep going, but that is a little bit of a concern. So now, first on the ELO filter, I know a lot of people that use this website just go right at the top where the average is, average ELO. But if you read what this says, so average is the average ELO of all players fit in the specified group. So if you have an 1800 player playing against a 1400 player, the average is 1600, and it's going to go in the 1600 category if you go for average elo. But that's not really representative of a fair matchup. Like the 1800 player is going to beat that 1400 player every time. So I like doing limit. Limit elo of all players in the match must fit into specified group. So if we're looking at limit 1600 plus, all participants were 1600 or higher. And we can actually look at 1800 plus first. But there's only 472 games here. For the most part, I believe 1800 elo is top 15. Maybe I think it's up to top 20 with US because the US elos are generally higher right now. So it's just not a big sample size, so I don't think it's worth looking at. But 1600 plus is maybe where there's enough data to really look at. And you know what I'm thinking? It could be because I'm streaming my screen to you, RH.
Yeah, maybe that was.
So,
well, I can pull, if I pull your stream up, I can probably just go and look at that.
yeah, I'm going to try stopping the stream to you. See if that helps at all. Probably should. Hopefully. Yeah, I do have a warning on my OBS. Encoding overloaded.
Yeah. Well, I've got it pulled up on my end now, and it looks, it's not, at least for now, it's not buffering for me.
So. Okay, so hopefully this fixes it.
Yeah.
We shall see. So if we look at ELO 1600 plus, allies definitely have an advantage here. I don't think there's too much to really take away from this ELO. It's a pretty small sample size for games, and what I really wanted to look at is how much a few players can skew the results at this level. Like if we look at the top player, Rai, he's on an 88 game win streak with US forces right now. He's won 88 games in a... I've barely played 88 games as any faction. Like an 88 game win streak. So like stuff like that when he's, and this is his alt, by the way. The number 2 US player in the world is the number 1 player's alt account, which is on a 42 game win streak. So when you have data like that in the mix, it is skewing stuff. So I don't want to read too much into the stats there, but I did want to look at them just so everyone can see. I am interested in seeing what maps they choose, and for the most part, it's pretty reflective of what we saw for everyone except Longris is notably much lower. It's not number 2 anymore. I am surprised to see that Twin Beaches is number 2 over Famenville. But hey, credit to Twin Beaches there. So what I'm really interested in is the next set of ELOs as we go down. What were you going to say, RH?
I said I think it's funny that there's still 24 Simoy games at this level, which means somebody like, I wonder, I've taken the approach of I don't ban it because I hate other maps more, and I'm just hoping that the other person has it banned. So maybe that's what's happening here, is that there's somebody that doesn't have Simois on their ban list, and they're getting all the Simois matches.
That's what I'm thinking because I've considered that too. Like maybe take some off my ban list so I can put something else with the assumption that everyone else probably has some banned. But once you come across someone else with that mentality, now you're stuck playing a game on
Problem.
Samoa. So, all right, next ELO group 1400 to 1599. And I think this is where data starts to become more reliable. The sample size still isn't much bigger, but I think 3,800 games is enough. And critically, you don't have those top 1 to 5 players that are really skewing the data. And looking at a glance, it's not terrible. Um, like the British forces are overperforming. Um, and yeah, it's above 51%, but it's not really too bad, I think. But where it does get bad is when you look at the breakdown by specific faction, where Wehrmacht is only at a 45% win rate versus British, and that is a problem. And I think that's where I really feel it too. Like when I play US or British or DAC, I feel like when I lose, it's mostly skill issue. But when I play Wehrmacht versus British, I often feel like there's nothing I could have done. And don't get me wrong, it's skill issue too. I'm only like a 1200 level or elo player, so I'm definitely making mistakes, but just I think everyone would kind of agree that Wehrmacht is kind of struggling, especially versus Brits.
I think that the last patch buffing like the 221 getting the ability to have the Panzer books plus the signal radio, I think that was helpful. I don't really know if I like how they redid Jaegers. Like I don't think that I like, because at this point I'm more so playing allies, but I play Wehrmacht over DAC, but it is just a struggle because the grenadiers that you get, like your early game is entirely passive. Like you can't, if the other person knows what they're doing, they're going to beat you in the early game, and you're just trying not to lose as hard as you can for the first 5 minutes until you can either get a 221 out or you can get like a Panzer Grenadier squad, something that actually can fight allied main lines. Like it's just pain. Especially, I think the Brits have it so oppressive because I know like I play Brits as I would say I'm maining Brits more than anybody else, and the ability to just lock down a early, like, you can either do Dingo with riflemen, or if you do like a Vickers with some sappers and Tommies, like if you can get the Dingo out in 5 minutes, then there's not really a lot that the Wehrmacht player can do, especially if
You
they
mean the Humber?
go. Is that what I say? Oh yeah, Humber. I'm thinking the Hummer. The As soon as you get the Humber on the field, Wehrmacht is kind of just like, if you play the Humber correctly, there's not a lot that they can do until they either have to call in like a battle group pick, like if they do the 222, the 232, or or if they get lucky with like a pack shot or the 221. Like it is a very oppressive thing to fight against.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I think that Humber timing is what really kills Wehrmacht because, I mean, if you look, Wehrmacht is actually a 53% win rate against US. And I think the reason there's such a big difference here is because what I've found and what I've seen from higher level players in the games that I've watched and casted is typically the way you get Wehrmacht to quote unquote work is a heavy tier 1 investment, so you can actually keep some kind of map control in the early game. You can gang up your units a bit to win those fights because you're not going to win the one-on-one fights. And I think against US that works because the Greyhound timing is typically a little bit later and you're able to delay that by going for that heavy tier 1 investment. Whereas against the British, I feel that with the Humber timing, the Humber comes out. I guess I never really added up the fuel to see if it is earlier, but it certainly feels a lot earlier. Um, and if you go for that heavy tier 1 investment against Brits, then you're just going to get destroyed when the Humber comes out. It always feels like you have to try to get your Luftwaffe company earlier or your Panzergrenadier company if that's what you're going for. It's and then that means you don't invest as heavy in tier 1, so you don't have the map control, and then it just kind of snowballs from there. That's kind of been my experience watching and playing, and maybe explains why Wehrmacht struggles against Brits but not so much against US.
I think, like, from my perspective as Brits, like, there's just so much more. There's so many more things you can do to ruin a Wehrmacht player that don't work nearly as well against DAC. Like, going off the top of my head, I love Gurkha doctrine, like Indian artillery. Gurkhas with Tommy guns dumpster anything that isn't a Panzer Grenadier if you get the range. If you micro them and get the range right, and there's pretty much no answer that Wehrmacht has to that other than hoping that they can stall for a verbal or hoping that they can stall for, like, if they, I'm trying to think of what, like a 232 or something. Like if you get like a solid vehicle, but then like you're relying on getting the fuel for that. Um, you got the Canadian doctrine, which is purpose, like it
Yeah.
feels like the Canadian doctrine is purpose built to ruin Wehrmacht team weapons.
Yeah.
Because if you don't pay attention, you get to fire a flame rifle grenade on your MG or on your Flak 38 or 30, and it's dead. It's dead in 2 seconds. Um, Armored is less useful, I would argue, than the other two against Wehrmacht. But like, if you can get, like, if you decide to try and rush the Crusader AA is just a better. It's like a beefed up Humber. Um, what's the other, like, Aussies are just a solid doctrine all around. Like the Australian, get once you get scopes on Aussies, they comfortably fight anything short of a Stoss squad, and they come out immediately. The only Brit doctrine that, like, and I mean, you've beat me with, you like Aaron C. I haven't really played around with Aaron C a lot with the commandos, but it seems like it's a solid doctrine. But then these doctrines against DAC, like, so like against DAC specifically, it takes away a lot of your utility, right? Because like against DAC, you're not going to want to do Gurkhas because there's no heavy AT, and you're fighting a faction that's purpose built for vehicles. Canadians are a little less useful against DAC because a lot of their like anti-infantry stuff, like the crocodile, flame nades, and that, they're again not as useful against vehicles. So it it does really. I find that it's really faction, like battle groups specifically. It's really faction dependent, but I think Ver just gets shafted really hard against Brit battle groups, and the U.S. has a few that are like, equally as good. Like I would argue Rangers against Ver is a decent time with how good Rangers are. I would say that Pershing doctrine with, if you spam, if it WSC 50 cals and Zooks, like I think that can be pretty good against Wehrmacht, but it's not like, that's more so of a like slow burn. Like you're not actively slaughtering the Wehrmacht players' units with that. You're just kind of stalling them out. Whereas the Brit units are just very lethal.
Yeah. I think yeah, you're absolutely right. Like you said, so many of these battle groups are just really good against Ver, where it's not that they're bad against DAC, they're just like normal. And I think that's reflected in the win rates there. Um, yeah, we'll go on to the next grouping. And this was maybe the most interesting for me, is that DAC has such a high win rate at this elo. Um, at 54.5. And I think I might have an idea why. Um, I guess I'll get right into it. I was going to look at the maps, but the maps are, it's pretty much the same story with the maps. Yeah, so DAC versus US at this Hilo, 52% win rate for DAC. So not really egregious, I'd say. It's pretty within reason. But 57% win rate against the British. And now, for a little bit with the Brits, I was in like the 1260 to 1280 range. So I was within this elo for a good number of games, for maybe like 8 to 10 of my games, I'd say, as Brits this patch, which, considering how often I play or don't play, that's a significant number of my Brit games. It's probably half of my Brit games. And what I found myself struggling a lot with, these stupid L640 rushes. I just could not win a game against him. Like, it got to the point where if I didn't see an immediate battle group pick from my opponent, I just assumed it was L640s. I would upgrade a boy's AT. If I didn't already pick a battle group, I'd go Australians, try to get a 2 pounder out. And it just, I don't know. I mean, don't like, skill issue. Yes, clearly. But at this specific elo range, I think that is a very difficult thing for people at this skill level to overcome. And maybe I'm just blowing my personal experience out of proportion here. Maybe I was struggling against L640 and there's some other reason that DAC is doing so well against Brits at this elo. But like, if we just quick look at the next elo down, DAC is back where it was at 1400. So why would Dak only be so dominant at this elo range? And I think it just happens to line up um, where people have the game knowledge and the micro capability to use the L640s, but not the game knowledge and the capabilities to play against him. And that's my personal take on Dak being dominant at this level.
I think that is a pretty good assessment. I'm a certified DAC hater, so I'll jump on the bandwagon to hate DAC. But I think that the main issue with it, and it probably comes to a head here, is you're at the point where people know how to micro infantry and people are starting to learn how to micro vehicles, but it's not like you can't. The thing that punishes DAC really hard is just manpower sniping things. And I think that you don't quite figure that out until you're past this elo, is to like really hurt them on manpower bleed when you can. Because it does seem that by the top of the elo, DAC is less preferred than Wehrmacht in terms of both amount of games played and win rate. And I think it's because DAC to me feels very much like a gimmick faction where you're reliant on your 5 minute call in or your, like, depending on what battle group you do, it relies on picking the right gimmick at the right time. And if you do that correctly, you win. And if you do that incorrectly, you lose extremely hard. And also, I think at this elo specifically, at least what I've started to run into is, like, I think the Bursa spam seems to be the
Mm,
favorite strategy.
true.
Like, I haven't played in the past week because I've been busy with other things, but the last like 5 or 6 games I played against a DAC player, I would say I only had one that didn't go Bursa Doctrine. And it's always the same, like, the Bursa Blob backed up with a bike, backed up with an ambulance into either a fast Semavente or a fast M1340. And like it's winnable. It's just really, really hard to get to have the pieces fall into place.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do think Bursa's will be getting some kind of nerf this patch, But I'll also say that when I was up in this elo range, I started seeing less burst ability. You definitely still saw them, but I think maybe that's where it started to get like, okay, versus I'm bleeding manpower a lot with them. And that's kind of the way you need to play against versus is try to bleed their manpower as much as you can because you're not gonna outcap them. You just gotta do as much damage to them when you do fight them. And I think maybe at this elo, DAC players were kind of running into that and switching to the L640 and not I keep saying L640. It's not even specifically that, but you brought up a good point like where at this elo, you're starting to get, really good at keeping your light vehicles alive. You said vehicle micro, like, having your 250, your first 250 stay alive for a significant part of the match is a big difference. And that might be kind of what's setting people apart from this elo range to the next elo range below it. You use your 6 minute call in, your 250 comes in, it's alive for a minute, and then it dies. Is a big difference from you keep your 250 alive. It hits vet one, so it gets the passive healing to units garrisoned inside. It keeps vetting up. It's rare, but seeing a vet 3 250 with the suppression is really nice. And I'm not saying that's happening a meaningful amount at this elo or any elo for that matter, but just keeping that 250 alive is so useful. And constant assault disembarks with your assault grenadiers as long as that thing's alive. It's a big thing, and I think as much as I want to blame solely L640 rushes, I think that's a big part of it too.
Yeah, I think armored support as well. I know that one's really, really
Yeah,
popular. Because that's the one that I kind of run with. Is just rushing an Octorad out. Well, Octorad 232. Um, and pairing that with 250 slash nines. I think that like that DAC is kind of in the same situation as Brits, where they just have a lot of really strong battle groups to pick from.
yeah,
Like you can't. There's not a like apart from I think Battlefield Espionage, most of the DAC battle groups you can find a good use for all the time. Some of them are map dependent, but a lot of them are just all around good options. And I think that like the US battle groups and the VAR battle groups, at least I find, are a lot less utilitarian. Like there's clearly bad options, and depending on your map and your matchup, some of your like whatever you have as your three might not even like you might be limited to one just because of how bad the others are in the situation you find yourself in. And I think Brits and DAC have that less.
yeah. I think that makes sense. Although, like Wehrmacht, I like playing a lot of their different battle groups, but I do think Breakthrough is the very clear best battle group right now. And US, again, I like playing a lot of the battle groups, but well, I don't know. US is maybe a little different. I think US actually does have a lot of viable ones. Anything that makes your scouts better is popular right now because then you just spam pathfinders or spam artillery observers. Then armored is always good with the instant vet one. Um, so I do think US maybe doesn't fall into that category, but yeah. I also did like that you pointed out how often things were picked. That's something I wasn't pointing out on the stream here. The percentage that these factions are actually played. That's something I should have looked at, but we'll keep an eye on it as we go to the next elo range. So here, this is the elo that you and I are both in for most of our factions. 1100 to 1249. The maps look pretty standard again. Nothing really crazy here, I think. Although I do want to point out, Tuscan Vineyard has been like pretty middle of the pack for all these ELO ranges. But I do think it's one that gets complained about maybe the most because I think people just ban Samoa, so no one's even complaining about it. They just ban it. Jable Pass, I think it was complained about a little bit when it first came out, but now again, the people that don't like it just ban it. But Tuscan Vineyard's kind of like in a weird spot, I feel like, where a lot of people are not banning it, but they don't like it. I think it's because it plays standard enough where it's maybe not on your ban list, but it's just got some things about it that can be annoying, like all the light cover. blocking your AT gun shots or messing with light vehicle pathing can get pretty annoying.
Yeah, I banned Tuscan Vineyards, and I don't complain about it because I banned it.
Right.
It's
So
not my kind of map.
yeah, I think that's probably why it's complained about a lot, because it's like maybe the map that is just in the worst spot for that, where it's good enough where not everyone's banning it, but has enough wrong with it that people are still complaining. So here we see much more US picked at this compared to Brit. The Wehrmacht DAC pick rate is about the same. And the win rates look pretty good. And for the first, or not the first time, nope. Wehrmacht's still struggling against Brits, but everything else looks really even at this elo. Just Wehrmacht struggling against Brits. So I don't really think there's anything new to talk about here, unless you have something to add.
No, I think it's pretty much the same story
Yeah.
as the one above it.
I do want to add, though, that 12,500 games played at this elo. So we can see the elo brackets, even though the range is the same, 150 elo, the amount of people, or at least amount of active people, definitely grows at this. And this is where, in my opinion, it gets really interesting. So 12,500 games played. We get to the 800 to 1099, 43,000 games played. I did not expect that so many people were at this elo. Like, I knew this was probably the most common elo range, like right around 1,000. It makes sense. Like, that's what you start at. So if you win and lose about the same amount of games against the same level opponents, that's where it'll be. But 43,000 was just so much more. That really shocked me. But yeah, if we look at the maps, same story pretty much, except Longris is actually number one at this elo. So I kind of was wondering when I looked at this earlier, is this maybe like, people who aren't like trying to be super competitive with it, like I'm watching YouTube videos of like all these pros playing. I'm watching Tightrope and Steven JF and Shark and all these guys, and I'm like really trying to study the game. And I think that's one of the only reasons I'm at the elo I'm at, is because like I try to understand the game at a deeper level. I think at this elo, you're more just playing because you enjoy playing. You're not really studying the game. And I think part of that also means you were probably big into the earlier games in the franchise, and you're playing more for things that you find fun rather than things you want to be competitive on. And I think for a lot of people, the old maps are just nostalgic and that makes them fun. And that's why I think you might see Longris and Angoville near the top, because people at this elo are more nostalgic and more just in it for the casual fun experience rather than, oh, I need to be the best I can be.
I think that's fair. I would also argue that in this elo and the one below it, MG spam is like a very prevalent
Mm,
thing. And I'm looking at these top maps, and all of these top maps are maps where MG spam wins you the game if you do it, if you pull it off correctly. Samoy's is definitely an MG spam map, but everybody hates Samoy's. That seems to be the universal constant through here. But
yeah.
I would say nostalgia does play into it too. Like, I like playing Longres because I've played Longres how many times in Co2, and I like playing. I still find it better. Like, I find that I play better on maps that I've played in Co2, since I know the feel of the map, and like I'm still pretty new to Co3. So I'm still getting used to some of the, like, I still don't really, I like occasionally will try to play Twin Beaches or Pacino, or even like the occasional rare Toronto coastline. Villa Fiore, I'm kind of a bit more accustomed to, but like I always love like Crossing, Angeville, Faymanville, and long res. Like I just anytime I play on those maps, I just feel really confident because I know the map. I know exactly how the map plays, and I have there's no like hesitations on my part. Whereas with some of the maps that I'm still like they're CoH3 specific maps, I'm still figuring out how that map plays. I still don't know how it plays, and I probably won't for another couple hundred games. So it could definitely be nostalgia playing a role there.
Yeah, yeah, I think that makes sense. And then if we look at the win rates specifically by faction, nothing crazy here. And I think this makes sense. At this elo, it's mostly it comes down to just well, I have a feeling that a lot of people at these elos are playing their faction and their faction only. And I think not that that's going to affect these win rates, but I don't think people are going to be as knowledgeable about the game to really take advantage of these things that will be taken advantage of at higher elos. And I think, yeah, you just see some more balance. And I guess maybe that's also a testament to the balancing of the game. In order for something to be imbalanced, like you really have to know what you're doing. And if you just look at the game kind of from a little bit further away, it is pretty balanced, and I think that's kind of reflected here at this elo.
Yeah,
Oh
I know a lot from like my days modding competitive Hoi 4. You can have something sitting in a mod or a game that like you don't touch for months and months on end, and until somebody actually takes the effort to learn what it is and how they can manipulate it to benefit them, then you all of a sudden, that person's going to take it and run with it until you change something with it. And that's, that I think that's kind of what happened with how USF is so dominant in the upper echelon of this game is like people aren't taking advantage of all of the tools that USF offers at these tiers. Same for maybe like Wehrmacht in a sense of like the more you play Wehrmacht and know how to utilize it, it gets better. Same and like that I think is kind of the story of you if you kind of climb the elo from bottom to top and just take a look at each of them, the more that you unlock the knowledge to play a faction and find all of those little gimmicks, those little tool like advantages that you can get out of each faction, that's where the balance starts to skew.
yeah, yeah, totally agreed. And then we won't spend too much time here, especially because we're already at 1 o'clock here. But the lowest elo bracket, and I was not expecting this, but Wehrmacht just dominating. I'm not too sure why. Like Wehrmacht, maybe you could argue because it's you can just go heavy on the MG42s. It's easier to micro. But what doesn't make sense is like DAC is one of the hardest factions to micro. I'm curious to see how people are playing, and maybe I'll try to stream some games at the CeeLo now, because I am curious. Like, what are they doing? I don't know. I don't really have any good ideas, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because we got to get into the actual speculation of the balance. Are you still able to stick around or?
Yeah, let me go check. I'll check my work stuff, but I should be fine. It's a slow day.
Awesome. Um, so yeah, while you check that, I'll recap or yeah, finish this part off with just we talked about this before the stream started, but holy moly, Rai, number one player in the world for US, 88 game win streak. He's won 88 games in a row as US forces. And if that wasn't impressive enough, his alt account is number 2 in the world as US forces and has won 42 games in a row. And if we extrapolate on this a little bit, he's probably not. I don't even know how the math. What I'm getting at is he's probably really, if you combine both of these accounts, over 100 games without
Well,
a loss, right?
Actually, yours is not refreshed. I've refreshed mine. He's now at 91 game win
Oh
streak
my! So
playing right
since
now.
I opened this
So
page,
he's
he's
won
won
three more
three
games.
more. That is absolutely wild. I wonder if with the update coming tomorrow, he wants to see if he can get to a 100 game win streak before the new
I,
patch.
I'm I'm thinking that as well.
Yeah,
If I was in his position, I'd want to see if I could get 100 games.
yeah, that's just
Just to show. I mean,
wild. Absolutely
this is a
wild.
man that has been. I've watched him a lot on I think Imperial Dane's propaganda cast, and this is a man that regularly changes his name to reflect his opinions on the balance state. And yeah, I think he's definitely going for the 100 game win streak.
Yeah, I think maybe he's trying to prove something about what he wants to see with this balance patch. Because if we look at the other factions, he's still dominant. If you look at where he's ranked, his win rate and everything, but only on 11 game winning streak with both of his accounts, which took number one and number three with both of his accounts, but not as dominant nearly as US. Then if we look at Dak, wow, 30 game win streak with Dak. I don't think it was like that last time I checked. And an 18 game win streak with his other account. So doing pretty well for himself with Dak as well. Also, he singular is the only two people above 2000 elo as Dak. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
And British forces, oh, he's in the top. He was not in the top 10 last time I checked with his alt account, but now he's in the top 10 with both of his accounts. And he's number one with all. Before last time I checked, Ferrigy was number one Wehrmacht. He's 3 points ahead of Ferrigy there. So
Yeah, I think they keep. I think. Well, I mean, they're the top people, so they play against each other all the time. So I
yeah,
think they've been back and forth. You know, one day of the week Ray's on top, next day it's Fairy G. But I've seen the game. I've seen several games where they play against each other, and it's like it's pretty down to the wire competitive most of the time.
yeah, those have to be some great games to watch. But yeah, that's enough of Co3 stats. Let's get into some speculation. I was gonna try to do this line by line. Maybe I can still kind of try to do that here. I can just makeshift this. So for the British, I mean, so based on all the stats we looked at, it looks like the thing the British maybe need the most in terms of balancing for competitiveness is something to maybe tune them down a little versus Wehrmacht specifically, or maybe you could argue maybe Wehrmacht need a buff. And I will say something that I like about Co3 balance so far is the dev team seem to generally lean toward buffing underperforming units rather than nerfing overperforming units. And I think that's a big change from Co2, where Co2, a lot of things would get nerfed down until it was balanced. And I think the end result of that was that a lot of Co2 lacked kind of variety, and a lot of factions ended up playing pretty similar. Like they were definitely still different factions, but you don't get nearly the same variety you have in Code 3. On the flip side, that becomes a lot harder to balance, and I think that's why you see a lot of complaints about the balance in Code 3. But you did in Code 2 when it was still being worked on, and as we looked at the stats, it's really not bad. It's mostly just Wehrmacht underperforming against British. Everything else is actually pretty balanced. But so the number one thing, and I didn't put these in order of importance, but the first thing I thought of with UKF was an over repair nerf for the Australian faction. I think it's a great battle group ability, and I don't think they should remove it. But it just seems like, man, when you're up against like double, triple Stewart or the Crusaders, it and when they're over repaired, it just feels so oppressive. So And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing on its own. Like I said, I like that their balance is keep units strong, just make other units strong too. So, what I think they might do here, and maybe over repair isn't even on the radar for them, but I think at a 25 munition cost when you want to use it, um, it makes it mean a little bit more. It's more of a decision like, okay, I'm going to over repair this now. Because right now you just repair anything, and by the time it's done repairing, it has the over repair because you're not microing the repairing and waiting till it's exactly 100% health and then moving it. You're just letting it sit there until you need it again. And by that time, it's already over repaired. So I think make it a 25 munition cost, um, but keep everything else the same. I don't know. What do you think?
Um, I definitely think they're going to touch the Australian doctrine. I just don't know if they're going to go after over repair. I think your proposal makes sense. Because it being free is just really strong. I'm honestly thinking they're going to do something more along the Australian infantry itself, whether they slow down the rate that it whether they add it to where it takes a command point. I don't think they'll do that, but I think they might adjust the stats on it slightly because I think that the main problem with this battle group is with when you pair over repair with the fact that you get the Aussie section, it makes it incredibly good against infantry and vehicles. And I think, especially with the 2-pounder as well. Now they nerfed the 2-pounder in the last patch or two, but I think that they will probably do something. I'm leaning towards it being more on the Australian infantry themselves, whether they adjust the upkeep cost or they adjust the damage on them. But I think that it will be something. I think that the battle group will have something done to it. I just don't know what.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I'm basing I was trying to base these off of what I think they would do to fix things, not necessarily what I would do. I in my later suggestions, especially for like US, I stray away from that, not on purpose, but it happened and I kind of instead do what I want to do. But it did get me thinking while I was doing this. They have a new balance team in there. Or I shouldn't say new as in like the old one was replaced because I don't think it was, but new people are in there in addition. So they might take a little bit different approach. And the reason I went for the over repairs because so many people complain about the Aussie sections. And it seems like in the past, CoH3 balance has tried to, like I said, they don't want to nerf like Aussies are a big part of the reason why you get the battle group. And I think rather than nerf them, they'll nerf something else that pairs with them. So the Aussies are still good, but now it's a little harder to use them because maybe now vehicles are more of a problem. Your Aussies don't have snares. So that's already an issue. The 2-pounder helps with that, but that was nerfed a little. And now if over repair was nerfed, maybe that, like, that's, I'm trying to think, they seem to think very outside the box with their balance. So, but I could definitely be wrong. I could definitely see what you said. A slight nerf to the Aussies would, I think, make sense. Um, yeah. The next
I will say
thing. Oh,
I'm probably taking the opposite balance. Is I'm just basing off of what I personally would like them to see, not what I actually think they're going to do. So a
okay. And I think
little bit of
that's,
a
yeah, I think it's good to have that because I think if we didn't mention a lot of that stuff, people would. I say that as if people are going to watch this. I appreciate all 5 of you out there watching this video. Um, but yeah, the next thing I have is a 3-inch mortar vet 1 change. This doesn't get talked about a lot, but the vet 1 on the 3-inch mortar is garbage. It's that setup thing that the AT guns have. With the AT guns, it's good. I think it's maybe sometimes difficult to use, but it's kind of like the hold down on the Panzer IV. You can use it. The hardest thing is remembering to use it. But with the mortar, it just feels so bad because you're often rotating your mortar around. You're shooting at something on this side of the map, then this side of the map, especially in 1v1s. And again, everything we're talking about here is mostly based on our experience in 1v1s, not really any team game consideration. So in a 1v1 with your mortar having to pack up and set up with a new firing arc so often, I think this vet one is not good. And I think change is due. And I was thinking maybe they add an incendiary barrage to it. Um, Now this, I don't. I guess if I really thought about it, I don't think this is what they would actually go with. It's too much overlap with the Canadian battle group, and maybe it would be like a white phosphorus barrage or something. Maybe that would fit better. But um, I don't think flares make sense like the German mortar has because they have the recce sections, and the U.S. already kind of has the extra damage related barrages. So I thought maybe something that was more area denial would fit for the 3 inch.
I don't think I've ever built a 3-inch mortar in all of my Brit builds. So that is a weapon I do not have any opinions on either way because I don't really. I mean, I guess I've faced them as Wehrmacht or DAC before, but it
Well, I will tell
I
you,
could see why locking that mortar down could be an issue.
yeah, it's not. It's a vet. I don't think I've ever seen anyone use that vet one. Next thing. Now this is me. Oh boy. Okay. So I this is a few changes that I'll combine. The Stewarts. I think the Stewarts are in a good spot, but I think sometimes you play those games where someone's going like it's just Stewart rush against you. And I mean, maybe that's okay, but I thought there might be an opportunity for a change here. Um, and I'm also saying this because I don't think there's a lot with the British that need to be fixed in the first place. So I was kind of reaching, but I think this would be an interesting change. So decrease the Stewart unlock by 5 fuel. So from 25 fuel down to 20 fuel. And then increase the cost of the Stewart by 5 fuel. So from 40 to 45 fuel. So this way, if you're only building one Stewart, it's the same exact fuel cost. It's just you pay 5 of the fuel a little earlier or 5 of the fuel a little later. But it's the same fuel to get your first Stewart. But then each Stewart you build after that is 5 extra fuel from what it would have been. And that might help with Stewart spam a little. It's not something I face a lot, but yeah, I don't know. Just seemed like something
Um,
that Relic might throw in there that people aren't expecting.
I'm all for reducing spam. I absolutely hate just the I like seeing well-rounded builds with a bunch of different units working together synchronizing. I absolutely hate seeing the same unit spammed like 3 or 4 times over apart from, I mean, obviously mainline infantry you have to, but like especially like I'm thinking Crusaders, but like everybody does it, Crusaders, Panzer threes for DAC, etc. Like I hate seeing the same unit, like 5 or 6 of them just balled up and thrown at something. I think it's a pretty low level tactic that gets used at the upper echelons of all of the games, to be fair. It's not exclusive to Co3. So anything that helps reduce that, I'm a fan of.
Yeah, I think this would encourage some build variety if you were thinking of going for Stewart spam. Maybe just get the one Stewart, get an AT gun, or maybe this would encourage more Humber and Stewart builds. Maybe not. I don't know. I just think it's something Relic could do, and that's actually all the changes I had for the Brits. And before I turn it over to you, um, I was thinking hard about the incendiary abilities with the Canadian battle group because I think that is one of the main things that needs to be fixed for the balance against Wehrmacht. But I went and tested um, the incendiary rifle grenades, and this was without pyrotechnics, without like the slowing and all that, just the incendiary munition upgrade. And when I was launching the rifle grenades, I wish I had done this morning. I did this Saturday morning because we were supposed to stream this on Saturday originally. Um, I think it was 4 models killed, but like if you're in heavy cover, so you're pretty clumped up, it was 4 models killed with a regular infantry section rifle grenade. When you switched it to the incendiary, it was still 4 models killed. Now, obviously, if you stood there, you were going to die, but it always felt like to me that the incendiary munitions was just like doing more damage like as soon as it hit. And I know that's not really what the incendiary stuff is supposed to do, but it always felt like that to me. And I think maybe they recently buffed the rifle grenades, and I think that might be part of what was making me think it was specifically the incendiary that was so powerful. But you just don't see British grenade tech a whole lot unless they are going for the incendiary munitions, and I think that might be part of it. So I'm kind of curious to try using the rifle grenades more as Brits against Wehrmacht without incendiary, but I also didn't feel like I was confident enough to suggest any changes there. But so I just wanted to mention that. Also, uh, Win in chat says great change to the Stewart. To be honest, thank you. I was I really cooked on that one. Um, but yeah, I'll turn it over to you now. Do you have it up on your sheet? I can just open that. Oh nope,
I
nothing.
don't
Oh, it is on your
have.
sheet.
I have some stuff on there, but I don't have anything specific. Like I didn't have like specific idea changes. Mine are just kind of like flavor of what I think would need adjusted. So it's not super specific. Um, I guess I was gonna start. I have Canadian like the flame nades on there. It's just near like I just have them listed. I really think they're going to nerf it in some way. Like I think that the main issue that I see with it is like it does maybe it's not um like it's more of a feels thing rather than a like fact objective thing, but it feels like it insta wipes the sections a lot more than just a normal rifle grenade. And I think it could have something to do as well with because it's an incendiary area of effects like burn that lasts longer. Even if like on a normal rifle grenade, say you get like 2 models surviving on like the sliverest of health, then on like, incendiary rifle grenade, those guys are dead because even if they survive the initial blast, they're not going to be able to pack up an MG before um the fire like gets them.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that because it affects every single grenade across the entire British faction, like it affects like it's not just the rifle grenades, it's the sap grenades, it's if you have like a foot guard section, it's there. I think their gammon gets it, the Canadian unit itself gets it. Like it just I think that the ubiquity of it for effectively like you're still paying the same cost of the grenade if you pair it with the like free grenade on an objective, then it's even like it's even more of a harsh thing. And
Yeah.
the other thing I've seen mentioned in team games, which I don't play team games really at all, but I've seen this in 1v1s like at upper level, the burnout ability that you can pick instead of the flame grenades. I think they might have to change that because I've seen several complaints in the main like the Relic Discord where it seems that like in upper like 3v3 4v4, if you get a group that's just all Brits or like mostly Brits and everybody picks the burnout ability, you can like consistently keep a cutoff decapped
Mm,
because of the way that that works, where it's just the more that you spam that you can just keep spamming that on a flag in the back line and it'll keep decapping it or getting rid of whatever's there. I think that they probably will have to do some kind of a readjustment to that. It feels like such a. I mean, I'm going to call it. I've never used it, but I believe that you don't actually. Do you need vision for that? Because I know you've used
you
it against
do.
me like
Yeah.
once. You do need vision.
I tried to make it work in a 1v1, but specifically because you need vision, it's really hard to make it work. And I think it's good that you need the vision, otherwise it would just
Yeah.
be
I
busted.
didn't know that you needed vision. I thought that it was just one of the like click and forget kind of things, but it is good that you need vision. I just think that it's still like a very I think for what it is, like it's a very strong ability. And especially if you have several people that can cycle that. Brits I think have pretty good recon. If you get a recce section, you can have the dingo. Like you have a lot of options for spotting. So I think that like the prevalence of vision makes it pretty good. But that's I don't have any concrete ideas. I'm just going off of what I think. Like what I think. I already talked about Aussies as well. Like I think something
Yeah.
to that them or the doctrine. The boys AT, like the infantry boys AT section, I feel like that could use a buff of some variety because like you're effectively turning a 260 manpower like infantry squad into like the equivalent of like the American Zook squad or the DAC Panzerjägers. Um, like it doesn't feel as good as like a Jaeger squad on the Germans, for example. Like the Jaegers that Germany gets or that Wehrmacht gets are better, but they cost a bit more. It just kind of feels like it's a very strange unit because you can get it really early. It really helps against DAC. Like it's pretty much custom built to fight DAC. But after the like after the light vehicles, it's effectively like a worthless unit because it doesn't have, the American Zook squad. It gets incredibly good veterancy. It gets like the White Foss rocket, the anti-tank satchel. It gets the extra range at Vet 3. It has like better range in general. The DAC Panzerjägers, they have ambush, so they can camouflage, they can stealth, like stealth cap. I think they can also stealth. Like they get the ambush bonus,
Yeah.
and like you could also like if you choose Panzerjäger, you can give them a Panzer Schreck, etc. But like it feels like the boys AT section specifically, it's like you use it, you get use out of it in the early game, but if if it's alive past the like 10-12 minute mark, it kind of is just a bad unit. Like because you'll get like eventually you're going to have foot guards completely replace that unit. So I don't know what they would do in terms of like buffing it. I honestly feel like instead of it being an upgrade for the regular like section, like maybe they just make it its own little unit of like you can buy a boys AT section and then they make it a mirror match to like the Panzerjägers. As like it gets like an ambush in that. I don't know. It feels like a very strange unit.
I wonder if they made it so you could put the boys' AT guns away.
That was the thing I saw a couple people suggest. I think that would definitely help because then it's just it's not like you're still not getting the utility of like a Bren section or a Recce section with the combat power, but it at least has combat power.
Yeah.
Like that would be nice.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Um
agree though. The boys' AT upgrade does not feel good. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and then the Dingo Humber, it's like I don't know what they do to them. I heavily dislike the way that they have the Dingo set up to be the counter to the 250 half track. Like I think that that's really dumb that they like, it's like they it's the same like rough caliber of a machine gun that the like MG34 is. And I think the Dingo actually has the same, if not worse, armor IRL than the 250 half track. But the fact that the Dingo can 1v1 the 250 for the first couple minutes of the game, I think that's really dumb. Like that seems like really lazy balancing to me. I would much rather like there is an anti-tank rifle version variant of the Dingo. I'd much rather you have to like, get that and maybe it's a really really cheap upgrade, but like I at least then it's like, it can deal with the 250, but then it's not going to completely screw over um like infantry squads. Whereas like, the Dingo right now, It'll maul a 250 at the beginning of the game. It'll pretty comfortably fight against Wehrmacht units at the beginning, or like DAC infantry, and then you get the you get the spot flares, you get the decoy flares, and then it's like everything with the Brits. Eventually, you can just, if it's still alive at a certain point, you can just refund it and get all your investment back. So
I think the
I feel like
dingo. I think it's okay. I think it seems not okay with the 250 because no one's really going for Panzer Grenadiers. But I think if that's fixed, then you're going to see the 250s fighting alongside Panzer Grenadiers as more of a norm. And you're not going to be able to just chase down a 250 because there's going to be other things there also shooting at the dingo. I think part of the problem now is like the two main builds for DAC are going bike Panzer Pio 250 into assault grens, which you're not really having a lot of support for the 250. You're fighting with the Panzer Pios usually inside the 250. Or the other build is just going Bursas where you're really not getting a 250 at all until your 6-minute call in, where the dingo is kind of irrelevant in those matchups. So I think if Panzer Grenadiers become good again, where people actually want to build them, I think a lot of the perceived issues with the dingo will go away, and it'll feel like a normal unit again.
yeah, that's fair, and like that's why I have the Humber there too. Is I just feel like they would touch something related to them because they are really, they're very very strong, especially against Wehrmacht. But to a lesser extent, DAC. Like I just feel like if they were going to change something, because I doubt they're going to touch sappers are fine, Tommies seem fine. Like I don't know what else they would touch that isn't one of those two items to affect Brit early game.
Yeah, I had the Humber on my list at first, but I didn't know what I'd want to change because against Wehrmacht, it just feels like it comes out so early. But against DAC, it's like, oh, well, it has to come out that early because of the flak truck. So it's, yeah, I don't know. It was, I ended up not putting the Humber because I didn't really have a good idea for it. And then maybe it's not the Humber that's the issue, it's the other factions. I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that because I my opinion is that Fair is just a terrible faction, but I'll save that. Also, we'll
Hopefully
get to
not
that.
after tomorrow. All right, let's go on to what do I have next? DAC. First thing, Pgren buff. I have decreased the cost to 280. It's 300 right now.
I have no idea why they're 300.
Yeah, why is it
Like it's
300? Why?
who decided that? Like it's not even like you don't even get the sixth man off the bat, and they cost an insane amount to reinforce. Who thought that 300 for a mainline infantry unit was a good idea?
Yeah, I think the reinforced cost is 32, which I think is the same as a rifleman, or maybe rifleman's 31. I did look at this. I don't remember the numbers, so shame on me. But the reinforced cost wasn't egregious. I felt like it was high, but it was in line with something. But yeah, why is it 300 man? Even 280 is more than any other mainline infantry. But sure, let's that. And I think the reason it's so expensive is because you're not supposed to play DAC like other factions. You're not supposed to, like, if you're US and you go for a 5 rifleman build, that's a lot of riflemen. But it's like, okay, that could work. I don't think I don't think the devs want that to work with DAC. Like, you're not supposed to have a build that's heavy infantry. They're the combined arms, use the 250s, and I think that's fine. So for that reason, sure. But 300s may be just a bit too much because not only is it is it expensive, like, to just get them on the field, it's also the timing that they come on the field. you have the bike to do a lot of your capping, which I guess alleviates a lot of that issue. But compare that to 260 manpower Bursas with sprint. I mean, why wouldn't you go for the Bursas? They're 40 less manpower each, and they can sprint into combat, and that also means sprint while they're capping. It's just such a much like it's just such a better option. I guess they don't get combined arms. They can't repair. They don't, so there is definitely things about Bursas that are worse, but I think the amount of early game advantages they have right now, the Palmgrens need a buff. And Win says,
Yeah.
yeah, I hardly ever see roaming 250. Usually they are backed up by PG or Pio. Yeah. Yeah, it's very rare that a 250 is by itself for the Dingo to get. But I think, when you only have like a couple Panzer Pios and you're skipping to Assault Grens, once you retreat one squad, now there's nothing, and the Dingo can maybe rush it down. But yeah, I think with Palmgrens being more relevant, that's less likely to happen. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's the other important thing with like them being 300. You pay 300 off the bat for a Panzer Grenadier squad. I can save that manpower, go for a stall, like a delay to get assault, like just go full assault grens, and then I'm buying an assault gren for the same 300 manpower. But that assault gren, I put it in a 250 that I buy, that I probably have to buy with the P grens as well if I'm going to use the healing on it, because P grens, you still need healing with them.
Yep.
So, I take the same 250 I was going to get for the P grens, I put the assault grens in it for 300 manpower, and now I have free grenades, a very, very strong, like, initial assault ability, and like if unless the person you're playing with has early tech nades, you're guaranteed to get some pretty good use out of that first 250. And then like the assault grens, they're like, they have breach, they have smoke. The only thing that they do not have is a snare, and you're playing DAC, so you're gonna like, you have so many other anti-tank options to pick from. Like it feels like the only time I find myself trying to do a Panzergren build is if I'm playing on a extremely open map where I don't think assault grens would work that well. Like if I'm playing Longress or Tunis, like where it's a lot more open. You get the value out of a long range unit. Because don't get me wrong, a 6-man Panzer Grenadier or Palm Grenadier with an MG34 is really, really good
Oh yeah.
sitting in cover, like at range. But how many, like, is that like, how many maps do you benefit from that? And also, if it's like a long range map like that, you could do like Panzerjäger, like Panzer Pioneer, rifle grenade launcher spam. You could just stall for the flak truck, and the flak truck locks down an area just as well as a Panzergren squad. Like that, they feel like a power crept unit. Like you're paying 300 manpower for a squad that is, in my opinion, objectively worse than assault grenadiers. Like it just doesn't feel great.
Yeah. And the Bursas.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
versus too.
It's
Like,
just, there are
yeah.
too many other viable options, which is also a problem with US, but we'll get to that later. Um, all right, so here's a light support company nerf. So this is where you build your assault grins and your flak half
Yeah.
track and all that stuff. So I think increase the cost by 5 fuel. I think that makes those assault gren builds just a little bit harder to achieve, because I think when you start up a game right now, you start with 25 fuel. Now, the first thing you're ever worried about connecting is 99.9% of the time is connecting fuel. Is your first priority. So the timing that you can get this built and get assault grens on the field is so early. And granted, 5 fuel isn't going to change that by a whole lot. But what this also does is it delays that flak timing just a little bit longer, which I think is necessary if once other changes are there. Like once the Flak Truck comes out 5 fuel later, maybe then can the Humber come out 5 fuel later, and then that helps Wehrmacht with the Humber issues. And there's also a bunch of US changes that I think should also happen. But I mean, I think when I think of a lot of the issues with US, like when we look at the stats, US doesn't have balance issues. It seems very balanced. But I doubt this is the way Relic wants the faction to be played, and I know this is not the way most of the player base wants the faction to be played, where it's a lot of scouts or pathfinders or artillery observers, whatever variant of the scout you want, into support weapon play. Like you're seeing, I mean, granted, riflemen are now more popular this patch than they were previously, ever since the MG, the 30 cal got instead of damage reduction, it's received accuracy. So that did help a little. But I said it when they released this last patch. Only half the issue was the 30 cal. The other half was making the rifleman build viable. And part of that is the timing of the flak half track. If you go for a rifleman build into Greyhound, the timing of that flak half track is usually well enough before your Greyhound, and sometimes well enough before you can even get an AT gun, that it's just a little too oppressive. So I think 5 fuel, in the grand scheme of things, if you have half the map, you're usually getting 21 fuel a minute. So this is about a 15-second delay if you're at full fuel capacity. You might not be at full fuel capacity, and you might be on a map that has more fuel, so it could change. But I think 5 fuel is a reasonable step.
I think it would I mean, I'm an assault gren enjoyer, so I kind of don't like that. But at the same time, I think if it, if it comes in conjunction with other things, I think it would be fine, because I'm all for anything that slows down Brit Humber timing. And I mean, I don't like playing against DAC either, so I think later flak half track is a great idea.
Yeah, and I think with the later assault grens too, it just makes the palm grens a little bit more viable now. Oh, I have to wait 15 more seconds for that assault gren, or whatever the timing ends up being based on your map control. Maybe it's like, okay, well, maybe I should incorporate at least a palm gren in my build or something. So just spice it up a little. Bursa nerf. And this was not my idea, but I liked the idea. I saw it. Maybe it was even multiple people have suggested it, probably, but I saw it on the official Discord. Speed bonus only applies in friendly territory. I think too many suggested nerfs to Bursas take away the identity of the unit. And again, that's one thing I really like that the CoH3 devs have done, is they're not trying to nerf away the identities of units and stuff like that. They try to keep the identity of the unit. So I like the speed bonus, but speed bonus out of combat and in friendly territory. I think that would help so much, because that really, like, 90% of the reason the bursts are so good is that early game map control. If you're not getting the speed bonus for capturing those points in the early game because that's neutral territory, I think that's going to help a lot with their I don't know the word. I want to say prevalence, but more like their over prevalence, whatever word that would be.
Yeah, I think anything to reduce burst of blobs would be generally received as a good change. So
Yeah. Next, Panzerjäger cost increase. They've decreased the cost of Panzerjägers over a couple different patches, and that's because they want to see the Panzerjägers being built more rather than called in, and that has worked. You see a lot more assault Gren call-ins as the first call-in instead of the Panzerjäger call-in. But what I kind of don't like is there's always a Panzerjäger on the field. Like no one is not building the Panzerjäger. So I don't know, maybe that's okay, but it just feels I don't know, something feels off about it. Like there should be a choice there, right? So I'm just saying increase it from 240 to 250. I think it was either last patch or two patches ago. I think it was at 250. So I think just go back. It already is cheaper to build it than call it in when it's 250. I think the call in for it is 275. So you're paying extra, whereas the call in for the assault grenadier is cheaper than building it. So I think it already makes sense to just build this and then call in the assault grenadier, especially if light support company goes up 5 fuel. You know, that's going to throw off the timing of your assault grenadier anyway. Maybe you just want to wait to the 6 minute mark. So yeah, I think other than that, the Panzerjäger's fine. I think it's pretty necessary to try to help keep your 250s alive early and your flak half track. But it would be nice maybe there was some like maybe I want to try to skip the Panzerjäger and wait for an AT gun or something. Especially if now palm grens are more relevant. Now you have the snares, so maybe you don't need the P Jaeger. So I don't know. I came up with a 10 manpower cost increase there.
I think it's fair. I think especially for the utility of that squad, especially if you do Panzerjägers and you give them the Shrek, the utility of that squad, it makes sense for them to be a little bit more. I'm very interested to see your US changes though, because I would argue that whatever the Panzerjäger has done to it should probably be done to the Bazooka squad, because they are. I mean, honestly, I would argue that the Bazooka squad for the US is actually better than the Panzerjäger if you once it's like upgraded
I
and like
agree.
the potential end game result of the Panzerjäger at Vet 3 versus the Zook squad at Vet 3 with the Bazooka upgrade. I think the Bazooka squad is a better unit. So I think that if this were to happen, I would like to see something similar done to the US version.
So I agree. I think the bazooka's better. The bazooka is already 250 manpower. But I think the difference is the Panzerjäger right now is and probably will remain a core unit for DAC, where it's not going to be common that you don't build it. Whereas for the US, I'd like to see, and my changes will hopefully reflect that, a shift where bazookas aren't a core unit anymore. Like, I definitely think there will be builds, maybe even 50% of the builds still incorporate bazookas. But right now, it's almost like, yeah, you're going to build bazookas. And I say that. That's not like if anyone watches Steven JF, like, he's always going rifleman build into Greyhound AT gun. He's not going bazookas. So there are definitely builds that work, but it just seems like the bazooka is just such a necessity in most games at most elos, and it's a nice crutch, especially against DAC. But yeah, I'm very excited to get to the US changes, and we do actually have to speed it up because now we're almost to the point where I'm gonna have to leave to go to work. So let's go over to your deck suggestions here, and we'll try to speed
Um,
this up in general, not
I'll say
because it's your turn.
I don't really have anything for DAC, mainly because I don't play it enough, and I actively don't enjoy playing against it. So I don't really have anything to add to your DAC pile. I think it makes sense.
All right, well, that's speeding it up, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh wait, USF. What happened to Wehrmacht? Did I put Wehrmacht last? Ooh, I think I put Wehrmacht last. I thought I put US last. All right, well, let's get into US. Um, okay, first, Scout, Pathfinder, and Artillery Observer nerf. It's silly that the meta build is to build these units and spam them. I think everyone agrees with that. So
Yeah.
I have a change here, and I'm actually going to skip ahead once I read this change because I have another change which I think is going to help. But I have that as a general change, not a faction specific change. But reduce veteran. Oh wait, no, it's here. Oh, okay. I thought I put that as a general change. I guess I moved it. Reduce veterancy gained from decapture and capture by 50%. I think part of the reason these are so good is because oftentimes by your first engagement with a scout, at least you're at vet 1. Now pathfinders and artillery observers, I did check, do have higher veterancy 1 requirements. But I think this is certainly not helping. That you're spamming these units, and every time they capture or decapture something, they're getting veterancy from it. I believe it's only 50 veterancy from a decapture and 100 from a capture. So this would decrease that to 25 and 50. But I think that makes sense. Like, your first unit to hit vet 1 right now as US is always your scout, which doesn't really make sense. Like, it should be more similar to when your first actual combat unit is hitting vet 1. So yeah, I think that would be a good step in the right direction. I've seen suggestions about decreasing like the total models in the pathfinders and artillery observers down to 3, keep them as more utility focused, and that might be the way to go. Because maybe this suggestion, especially thinking about it, pathfinders and artillery observers will need some other kind of nerf, because the reason people are getting it isn't because it's hitting vet 1 right away. So they will need another nerf. Maybe it is drop the model down by 1 so they're all 3-man. I don't really know. I know that they need to be nerfed. I don't have very good ideas on how to nerf them, though.
Yeah, that is fair. I would wonder if if you choose artillery observers or you choose pathfinders. I think artillery observers specifically, I wonder if there's an upgrade where at some point like they lose their cap bonus. Like they don't get the bonus capture speed. Like maybe if you become a pathfinder, you become a artillery observer, you're no longer capping at the because I believe they retain the like what is it, like 1.25 or 1.5 capture rate.
Yeah, I think it's
I believe they retain that.
1.25. And I could see that for the artillery. I think Pathfinder, like the identity of the unit, like it makes sense that it would capture fast, like it's a
Yeah,
Pathfinder. But I could definitely see that for artillery observer.
yeah, I would be. I was leaning more towards artillery observer. I just threw Pathfinder in as a spitball, but I think artillery observer specifically, I think should lose the capture bonus entirely because you're meant to be scouting, like passively calling in coordinates for artillery. You have the artillery beacon to like sit on and call. Like if you sit on the artillery beacon every 15 seconds, it's a barrage, which is incredibly like that's a whole thing, but. I think at least artillery observers should not get there. Like they should cap the same speed as a normal infantry.
I could definitely see that. And I could also see maybe, unlocking Pathfinders and artillery observers just unlocks an upgrade for the scout where you have to pay munitions to convert it to a Pathfinder or artillery observer. I could also see something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know exactly what, but something. I think everyone agrees something's got to be done. No one wants that to be the mainline infantry. Infantry assault nerf. This is the Rent-a-Blob from whatever that battle group is with the Rangers.
Advanced infantry.
Advanced infantry. So the cooldown, I think, should not start until the units are dead or begin retreating. Right now, you call it in, and the cooldown starts, I think, as soon as they enter combat. So it's not once they hit the field, which is good, because on like a 4v4 map, your cooldown would start as soon as, like, by the time they actually hit combat, your cooldown would be over. So that would be silly. But yeah, I think the cooldown shouldn't start until all the units in the Rent-a-Blob are dead or when they've reached the end of their timer and they begin retreating. That would limit the ability to kind of spam this. I still think it might need a nerf on top of that. I don't think I put one. I didn't, but yeah, I think that would be a good start.
All for that. No complaints.
Sweet. I also thought maybe putting like the bazooka upgrade doesn't affect the bazooka squads in here or something, which maybe, but did not include that. Rifleman buff. So their snare, the sticky bombs they get, just give them access to that at vet 1 even if you don't tech grenades. You still can't use frag grenades unless you tech grenades, but I think this is one of the reasons why bazookas are so popular right now, is because the fuel constraints as US hurts versus Dax specifically. Like, you feel like you need grenade tech sometimes so you can deal with the light vehicles, but if you do that, now you're delaying your own light vehicle. And it just, I think it's part of the reason. Sorry, I had to cough. I think it's part of the reason why you don't see as many rifleman builds, although, like I said, they are more common this patch. But yeah, that's how it was in CoH3, I believe, right? Sticky bombs at vet 1.
Yes.
Yeah, I think maybe go back to that. But I have a feeling a lot of people won't like that change, and that's fine. Uh, Pershing nerf, I have no idea what specifically should be nerfed. Maybe don't make it the fastest tank in the game when it's a heavy tank. That might be a good place to start. Um, but yeah, it's just way overpowered. All right, Air Support Center buff. So Air Support Center, I think, is a really tough one, and it's been a tough one since it started. There was like one patch where it was actually good, and it was too good because there was no time to dodge what was coming in. And I do actually want I don't think I put it in here, but the dive bomb needs a serious damage increase. You can dive bomb like anything and it just will walk away unless it's an infantry squad clumped up in cover or something, it's going to walk away. Like an infantry squad in a building will lose like one model. It needs a buff, but I don't think I put that in here. What I did put is change to the advanced recon. So right now, the regular recon, a plane passes by and it gives vision while it's flying over. The advanced recon upgrade increases the health of the unit, I believe, but it also gives it a wider area that it gives recon over. And that's just not useful. Maybe in team games that's a little useful, but like I'm having that thing fly over an area. Like I'm not saying, "Oh man, I wish I could see a little bit further." Because if that's where I wanted to see, that's where I would have clicked it. Um, but this I think would actually be useful. And as it stands, I think the recon is maybe the only reason people really get the air support center anyway. So maybe this isn't the part that should be buffed, but I thought it was a cool idea. Um, Now the recon is a 30-second loiter, which it was like that in the past. I don't know if it was 30 seconds, but it was a loiter. But it marks enemy vehicles within the loiter circle only while they're in the loiter circle. So the captain gets marked vehicle. This would work just like mark vehicle. And as long as that enemy vehicle is within the recon loiter, it's marked and it gets, the debuff. I think that would help give a reason to pick ASC. I would also probably so far as to say, like, I don't really think the captain should get it himself. But I didn't want to get into the weeds of what the captain should and shouldn't do. I do think it would be nice though if the captain got the off-map artillery and not the mark vehicle, and then the ASC got the mark vehicle, and that way you have some kind of more reason to pick the ASC. But yeah, that's a separate argument. I think this would be an interesting change for the ASC.
I think that sounds good.
All right, now the big one. So the unit rework. The half track goes to the motor pool. It's no longer available in Weapons Support Center because that is also, I think, one of the big reasons people even pick the Weapons Support Center, not only for the bazookas, but the half track. The motor pool cost is reduced to 100 manpower and 15 fuel from 200 manpower and 40 fuel. So now it costs the same as the Weapons Support Center. You still need to unlock it through getting the ASC, MSC, or ISC, which means you also need a barracks or weapons support center first, but the cost is drastically reduced. The Greyhound and the Chaffee must be unlocked at the motor pool, similar to the Stewart. Call it like the light armor support upgrade at the motor pool, which would cost 100 manpower and 25 fuel. So to unlock this and build the motor pool ends up being the same total cost as the motor pool is right now, 200 manpower and 40 fuel. But yeah, and that would unlock the building of the Greyhound and the Chaffee. What this means is half tracks and AT guns could be built at the motor pool after building the motor pool for 100 manpower and 15 fuel without unlocking light armor support. So where I think that helps is it delays the half track timing slightly. You now have to get 100 manpower and 15 fuel, but it like what was I going to say? It only delays it if previously you were going straight for weapon support center. If you were going for a rifleman build and then building weapon support center and then getting the half track, it ends up being the same cost, except now you can skip the weapon support center, which I think is kind of what everyone wants to see more of, is more building actual riflemen in games. So I think this enables that as an option more. And then also you get the AT gun, because maybe you don't want to go for half track, maybe you do want to get a Greyhound, but you need that AT gun just a little bit sooner sometimes. So yeah, and then the Mechanized Support Center now allows direct building of the AA half track or AT half track for no extra cost. So right now the Mechanized Support Center says, "Oh yeah, you can build these things at the motor pool in addition to the weapon support center, or instead of, you can direct build these at the motor pool, but they cost extra." First, who's building it at the motor pool when you could just build the other, like a vanilla half track at the weapon support center? Like why would I delay my half track so much that I'm waiting till I get the motor pool just so I can save some munitions on the upgrade? And then in addition to that, it costs extra fuel to direct build these from the motor pool. So I think it's just completely useless that the MSC does that right now. So just let you build the AA half track or AT half track directly from the motor pool for no extra cost, which is now where the regular half track would be. So yeah, I really like this idea. I think it gives, when I play US and I specifically try not to build bazookas against DAC, the biggest issue I have is the light vehicles. Giving the rifleman access to the sticky bombs at Vet 1 helps with that. And granted, with the changes to the motor pool that I suggested, maybe they don't need the sticky bombs at Vet 1. I'm not dead set on that. But I really like these changes. You can get an AT gun out at a more reasonable time where it can help counter things like the flak. And you can still get your half track out like you were before, but it's going to be at a later timing potentially, or the same timing at best. Um, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
I think everything about that makes sense. I definitely agree that I've go MSC usually when I do armored doctrine, for heavy barrels, and like yeah, I never use the buildable M16 or buildable GMC. It's always, you just keep spam buying the half tracks out of the WSC, and you upgrade them as you need them. So I think this would be, especially, like, I like the idea of, like, the thing that I always hated is back in CoH2, I tried to do it a little bit in CoH3. I like pairing, like, the half track, like, on the field reinforced style of play with my mainline units. And it's pretty much impossible to do that as US unless you have to go rifleman and WSC. And it just feels very, very weird. So I like the idea of, make motor pool cheaper. You can get the half track out of it. You can get, at least, it's an easier access to an anti-tank gun, which is another help against DAC specifically and vehicles in general. And then, it makes a lot more sense to just then pay for an unlock cost for the Greyhound, and then you can, that can directly impact the timings on them, so that maybe maybe the Greyhound's a little earlier, maybe it's a little later. Like, it seems like a really good idea.
Thanks. Yeah, I really like this idea. I also think, bazookas maybe still need a nerf, but the reason I didn't include that in here is because I think part of the reason bazookas seem so good right now is because they're already in the path of everything else you want to build currently. I think this would steer you away from that a bit, make riflemen better. And now my fear is if bazookas are nerfed with this strategy, you might never see them because no one's going to go weapon support center. And I don't think no one will go weapon support center, but hopefully you get kind of what I'm saying there. But now the only things available in weapon support center are the machine gun, the sniper, and the bazooka. And even the machine gun, there are so many ways you can power drop machine guns. Jeep with Vet 1 can potentially drop machine guns, and the Weasel can drop machine guns. So 3 of your 5 battle groups can just get you machine guns with, or sorry, 2 of your battle groups, and then the Jeep, no matter what battle group you go, can always get you an MG. So I think this could potentially make Weapon Support Center much less desirable, which is why I think bazookas, I don't have a nerf for them here because I think that would make it so no one's ever getting Weapon Support Center. At least if bazookas are still good, someone might say, yeah, I do want Weapon Support Center. I want to get a bazooka squad because it's actually good.
I
Yeah.
like.
What do you have for US?
We already talked about scouts, pathfinders, etc. So I can skip that one.
Yeah.
My thoughts on the rifleman debate was, it seemed like part of the issue with the US is, like, it matches DAC in the way that you can't buy veterancy on your units, especially your infantry. So I was thinking that maybe a slight reduction in the amount it takes to get a rifleman squad to vet 2 or vet 3, or conversely, if there was something you could do similar to like Wehrmacht officers' quarters or like Brit infantry training, if there was like a barracks upgrade that allowed, like, better basic training or something, like you can get rifleman squads that come out with better veterancy at the start. Just something to make it so that if you lose a rifleman squad, it's not like the complete end setback of your like mid game or something, right? Because like if you lose a Tommy section but you have infantry training, you can rebuild that, and it comes in at something at a starting point greater than 0. Same for Wehrmacht Grenadiers or like any Wehrmacht unit for that matter. DAC doesn't have it, but DAC also just, I think in general, has a lot stronger base units, like, because they're coming out with combined arms buffs. And also DAC is designed as a vehicle faction, not an infantry faction. So it's less of an issue for them. So I'm thinking just some way to get riflemen better. Like if you lose them early on, or like if you're trying to get them later in the game.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely did not have this on my radar, but Yeah, because I feel like riflemen in the mid to late game are fine. It's the early game where they're kind of tough, or if you can never afford to upgrade them with bars. But I could also see the argument, compared to infantry training and officer quarters and stuff. So yeah,
It was something I thought could make them a little bit more viable. Um, the next one I have is just some kind of nerf to the anti-tank half track. I think it feels like it's too good of an all-around unit, like especially with the barrage. I'm thinking specifically against Wehrmacht because this is how I always see it used. Um, I really dislike that it has the barrage at all because like I've played a GMC enough in Postscriptum to know that like a gun motor, like it's not designed as a barrage artillery style weapon. It can it do indirect fire? Yes, but it's going to be incredibly inaccurate, and it's not like it just it feels very very bad. I don't like that it has that. But if it's going to keep that, I think it does need some kind of a cost. Like it either needs to be nerfed on its cost, like if you're upgrading it from a normal half track. It needs to have its performance nerfed in the sense of like maybe it's like it has a longer reload, it has like less penetration. I don't know. It just it maybe you have to choose. Honestly, maybe you have to choose for like your veterancy. Maybe the veterancy one is instead of choosing between the blinding shot or I think it's shoot and scoot, like something
first
like that.
strike.
First strike. Yeah, maybe instead of choosing between first strike and the blinding shot, maybe you have to choose between like blinding shot and barrage, and then first strike maybe just becomes like a passive at vet 1 or vet 2. I don't know how many people go for first strike. I have to see data on it. I try to avoid building it because it's a unit that you end up having to spam, it feels like, and I don't like that. It's not my style. But the fact that it's a mobile anti-tank gun that also has the ability to become a pack howitzer, it just like this unit's just incredibly not fun to play against, especially when it's being like when there's like 3 or 4 of them being spammed. Like yes, you can counter them with like if you have like Jaegers with Shreks, or if you have like an anti-tank gun, like they're hard, like they're not hard to kill, but they're just extremely annoying, and the range especially on them, like the range is incredibly good. It's a very oppressive unit to play against, and it's spammed excessively.
Yeah, I really like the idea of giving the barrage as a vet one option instead. Everything else, I like where it's at, but yeah, the barrage, I think vet one would be really nice. Also, we gotta speed run this now. I'm gonna be late.
um I got well. All I have left for is, and this is more of a spitball, is I don't like that they moved the 76 Shermans as a default upgrade. I think that made USF like way too strong against Wehrmachts because it's like US having Sherman with the ability to get a 76 plus the Hellcat plus the Bulldozer Sherman. Like it doesn't feel like there's a Wehrmacht equivalent of that, and I have that in my Wehrmacht like ideas slash up like buffs. I think that the 76 Sherman, if they're going to make it like the default thing, rather than just you pay for an upgrade and suddenly all your normal Shermans are 76s, I think you should just have to build a 76 Sherman. Like it should just be a separate unit. Like you pick to build a 75 Sherman, and you can also pick to pick to unlock and build or maybe just pick to build a 76 Sherman. And then like the 76 can have like stat wise, it can have worse infantry, like anti-infantry capability. So like and it's more expensive. So it's like, because I think once you buy the upgrade, it still costs the same, whether it's a 75 or 76.
Yeah,
Like I don't think that yeah. So you can like, if you buy like 5 Sermon 75s and then you buy that upgrade, then suddenly you have 5 76s. I just don't like that. I think that it's dumb. And I don't like that they it just feels like a bad. I don't know why they moved it off of like the like mechanized specific doctrine, because now that every US player has the access to that. Like it feels like the Easy 8 is also kind of like a bit of an irrelevant unit because it's a better 76, but it's still like, why would I go Armored Doctrine to get the 70 like the Easy 8 when I can get like a budget Easy 8 off of any other doctrine? So
Yeah, I agree. I think that was a weird choice from them, and it was such a shame because there's the same patch they made the captain available to all support centers. And it was like, oh, maybe something else will actually be viable. Like I could totally see myself going mechanized now, and then they removed that from mechanized and made it global. It's like, well, that was the biggest reason to go mechanized, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so yeah, I think some kind of change there is definitely warranted. Um,
Right. Speed run
Yeah, speed
Wehrmacht.
run Wehrmacht. I'm not even going to hide the stuff. Transfer orders buff. It currently costs 160 manpower. Bring it down to 100. Maybe that's still not good enough, but let's start there, right? I think it would be really nice to see transfer orders. I was toying with the idea of like letting it keep veterancy or something, but in hindsight, like if you go heavy grenadier and then you get the officer quarter for Luftwaffe. Once you do the transfer orders, you'll get Vet 1. Or you could do the transfer orders, then get Luftwaffe, and you'll still get Vet 1. So keeping the veterancy actually is not as big a deal as I was initially thinking after I like did some testing and really thought about it. Um, but it would be nice if it was cheaper because I think if you can get out your grenadiers in the early game for 260 manpower, then spend 100 manpower later to convert them, I think that's the same cost as a Jaeger or Pigren squad anyway, 360, or maybe it's 380 for one or both of them. But either way, it's
Yeah,
comparable
something like that.
now, where it feels like, okay, this is actually useful. Like I can justify this. Whereas before, I mean, I will say, I think after I like really thought about it and looked at the numbers, I think people could have been using transfer orders more than anyone was, and it still would have been okay. And in fact, I could see a situation where this cost is lowered and then people start using it and it's too good. And then the cost ends up coming right back to where it is. And maybe it's fine. Like it could be one of those things where it's actually fine, just no one's using it. So we got to make it cheaper so people use it. And then it's too good. And then we bring it back. Um, I don't think that's going to be the case, but I could see it. But yeah, definitely make it cheaper. And then there's a weird delay when your grenadier goes away. There's like a five, I didn't time it, 5-10 second delay before the new one spawns. And like when I first did it, I thought there was a bug and it didn't work. And then the new unit just spawned. Like there was no indicator. Just make it instant. Like it should just, the grenadier should go away and the new unit should spawn in. Like that's just how it should work. Um, yeah, that's all. I think everyone wants a transfer orders buff. Maybe other people have different ways of doing it, but that was my idea. Panzer IV buff. I think it definitely needs a buff, especially with the 76s available. I saw all kinds of different suggestions, and I wanted to start with something just like small that I think could help a lot. Their Vet 1 ability, Focused Fire, after you use it, which lasts for 15 seconds, it's like higher rate of fire and maybe higher accuracy. I don't remember. You then get a 15-second debuff afterward, where you get minus 50% speed and rotation. It's like the only Vet 1 ability I can think of where you get a debuff after you use it. So just remove the debuff.
Yeah.
Because then I think people would use that Vet 1 a lot more, and that would help the Panzer IV a lot, I think. Right now, it's like, do I want to use the Vet 1? I'm just going to get a debuff. So that's my Wehrmacht changes.
Yeah, my non-biased Wehrmacht changes. Buff friends, please. I'm so sucking tired of the worst early game experience in any of the factions by far. It's so fun. It's so annoying. I hate them. I hate them so much. Let's take conscripts from CoH3, but make them take away everything good about conscripts. You know, do we get no cover combat bonus, no 7th man upgrade, no possibility of weapon upgrades? Yeah, I hate them. They need to perform better at combat, especially since they nerfed the cost. They made them more expensive last patch. I hate them. Anyway, um, this pioneer idea I had. Everything at the Wehrmacht starts the game off with the ability to get is a terrible unit minus the MG42. The MG42 is a good unit, a very good MG, but everything else sucks. Terrible. Pioneers especially, yes, they're the cheapest thing. Yes, they build really quick, and like everybody's the hot thing on the block to do now is just spam them. I think that they should, like, instead of just rebalancing the entire unit, I think that just adding an upgrade to either the HQ or something and letting it, like, give them an option to get a fourth man or some kind of survivability upgrade for later in the game, because like it is very hard to keep a 3-man repair squad alive, especially near the very very end of the game when you're trying to repair a bunch of crap.
Yeah, I could
I
see
don't
like
know.
Vet 2 giving it a fourth man or something would be nice.
Especially since like that is your minesweeper unit and that's your like flamer unit, and there's not a lot of, the Wehrmacht does not have a lot of like anti-building options compared to like
Yeah.
US Brits and that. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Ability to upgrade the 221 to the 222. Wehrmacht has, apart from the mechanized call-in 232 Octrod, there is like no powerful Wehrmacht light vehicle that's geared anti-infantry. Like, the 251, like the Stummel upgrade on it is like it's pretty good unit, but it doesn't have white potential. The 221 has white potential, but only for a very limited start, like when it comes out, and it immediately gets outclassed by like a Greyhound or a Humber. And you're forced to, if you want to fight the Greyhound or Humber, you turn it into the Panzerbuchse, and then it's completely worthless against infantry. So until you get something like a Wirbelwind, you have no option to deal, like, as a you have nothing like a Greyhound, nothing like a Humber, even like you don't really have anything like a Stuart. So I think that, like, the 222 was in CoH3. It was a very good unit in CoH3. Like, I don't see why it can't be added as like an upgrade path. Like, you can go Panzerbuchse at 221, or you can go autocannon 222. I think that it would be nice.
I disagree, but I don't have time to make a full argument, but I disagree.
I see. Um, the Stummel, like the 251 thing, it's more so I don't like that it feels like like Luftwaffe building feels very offensive minded. You've got the Wirbelwind, you've got the Flak 30, very, very good, very powerful anti-infantry units. You've got the Martyr, which is great. Like, it's not the best anti-tank in the world, but it's pretty good if you micro it. And like the Verbal and the 221 kind of fill the same role, but the Verbal does it better. The Panzer Grenadiers, very good unit, no complaints. But like the 221, even, or the 251 upgrading to the Stummel, it's good at indirect, but it's not a powerful, like, it doesn't have any great anti-infantry stuff. I just think it would be nice to have like more variety, in the sense of like you could upgrade the 251 to be like a flak half track, not a flak Veerling, but like the CoH2, like, kind of nerfed. It's not going to do as much damage as the flak Veerling, but it at least gives you like an anti-infantry option. The pack half track, like the pack 40 251, I think would be like a great, it shouldn't have a barrage. I'll clarify that. It should not have a barrage by any stretch of the imagination, but it would be like a good counter to like the US anti-tank half track, because it's effectively the same thing. So just a more variety option there.
Yeah, I think maybe there would be too much overlap between Panzer Grenadier HQ and Luftwaffe HQ, but I'd have to think about that more. I like the idea at least.
The tier 4 building, add something that deals with tanks, literally anything, because it just, your option is Panzer 4, which gets dumpstered by Grants and by 76 Shermans. Brumbar, which is really good, but it's anti-infantry. And Stoss, again, really good, but it's anti-infantry. Like, you don't have really like there's no good non-doctrine heavy anti-tank. The US is similar in this, but the US can at least rely on the abundance of like, the US has a bazooka squad that is dedicated anti-tank. Jaegers kind of fill that role, but Jaegers are worse at it now that they lost ambush. The Hellcat is I think the Hellcat's pretty good if you micro it, and then like you have the ability to just have the horde of 76 Shermans like running around with it. I think that like literally any type of heavy anti-tank, or even if it's just like, like something as simple as like the Jagdpanzer 470, I just think that the Wehrmacht tier 4 building should have some some anti-tank option.
Yeah, and I know that's been a popular thing now, being suggested. I think it could be okay. I'd like to see the Jagdpanzer 4 make its way into the game, like maybe in a battle group. But I think what my guess is what the devs are going for is that just kind of is the Wehrmacht tier 4, and your way of dealing with the allied heavies is by relying more on your tier 2 and tier 3 with the martyrs and the Stugs and the AT guns and the Jaegerschrecks, which I think is actually perfectly fine until it comes to dealing with the super heavies. Um, then it's a little, it struggles a bit, and you don't have like the pack 43 or something that can really pack a punch. But maybe that's, because you didn't go for a battle group to deal with it, and like that's how some of the other factions are to an extent with the dealing with super heavies. Well, specifically US, I guess. Yeah, I don't have time to say more, but yeah, I think tier 2 and tier 3 help you deal with that stuff a lot.
That's fair. And then the last thing is actually like an actual thing that I think could be plausible. I think that they should just like the Australian battle group, you get Bofors and 17-pounder emplacements as the same upgrade. It's you either get the 2-pounder or you get emplacements. Luftwaffe should be the same way. You either get the LG40 or you get emplacements, and then the like reduction of like you get like the cheaper manpower reinforcement. That's just at the end, like everybody gets that, because at this point, especially in 1v1s, but I imagine in some of the team games too, like why would you ever pick a stationary flak 88 emplacement that's going to get bombed, RD'd, etc. out of existence instead of just free manpower reinforcement? Like it's like a no-brainer selection. So
Yeah, I agree
yeah, that's why.
100%. It should be combined for sure.
Yeah, and that's all I have. That's all I have for now. Please buff grunts.
Yeah,
I miss useful grunts from CoH3.
I think if transfer orders is buffed, like the cost is decreased, then Grens might be okay, because now you can justify going for more of them early to help you early and then transferring them out. But yeah, I think we'll just disagree on that one. For general changes, all heavies fuel increase. I understand what they're going for with the call-ins with the heavies, or at least I think I do, because I will say in 1v1s I can actually build and see the super heavies where you really never could in Co2. So I like that part of it, but the heavies are just too cheap in fuel. They all need to be super costly in fuel. So first, like it shouldn't be so easy to replace one. Like every time I lose, by the time I lose a purging, like I have the fuel for another one, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, you killed that one. Here's a second one. Try to kill that. So it's just like
Yeah.
it's. I think that's not good, and just the amount it lets you stall, because you can invest your fuel, like specifically with US, into your side upgrades for cheaper manpower with the ISC for more health, or with anything you can just invest your fuel, because you can skip your tier 4, so you're saving that fuel, and the cost of the heavy is not reflected in you saving that fuel. So yeah, they gotta do something about that. And air support no longer gets rear armor damage bonus. I'm not 100% sold on that, but like a rocket run killing the KT so easy when it hits the rear armor is a little so maybe they shouldn't get
Yeah.
the rear armor bonus on the air support. And And I did want to talk about maps and stuff and maps that I'd like to see, but we definitely don't have time for that. Um, was there any closing thoughts you had before we end the stream?
No, kind of just waiting. I mean, I'll see what happens. I'm not as involved enough with Co3 as I was with Co2 to be any. I don't think that I have any real standing on balancing arguments, but I like to complain about things that I don't like. So I had a good time.
All right, yeah, thanks for joining me. This was fun. I'd like to do this kind of thing, like more podcast oriented, um, more often. Like I definitely think after the balance patch, at some point, um, maybe get you and Wilson on here. It might be fun. And maybe just for other big things that happen in the scene, I think it would be fun. So if any of you guys watching would like to see more of this stuff, just leave a comment. Let me know. If you prefer just watching the casts and me playing, that's fine. But if you do like this, let me know. Also, if anyone's watching this weekend,